You're listening to 2012 and Beyond on WSLR Radio 96.5 FM, also streaming live at wslr.org. My name is Emily, and I'm talking today to Michael Newton, PhD. Michael is a retired counseling psychologist. He is also a master hypnotherapist and has been a teacher for more than 40 years. He is the founder of the Michael Newton Institute for Life Between Lives Hypnotherapy, which trains hypnotherapists in his pioneering techniques. So, good morning, Michael.
Good morning to you, Emily.
Nice to be talking to you. You're in California?
Yes, I am. Although the place is hidden, Emily, I must tell your listeners that I keep myself well hidden here in my mountain stronghold, and now that I'm retired, it's really necessary. So I do respond to letters that are sent through my publisher, but as you mentioned, I don't do any active regression anymore because, you know, I've been retired for a couple of years now, and after over 40 years of this kind of work, it's really time. You know, I'm much happier to turn this over to the younger members of my organization who've been very well trained, and I might say that they came to us already as trained hypnotherapists, and we gave them a very condensed one-week program of the methodology on how to take clients to their life between lives. It's been a long time, Emily, since people have understood, you know, all about past lives, but my work is sort of on the cutting edge. And we've been working now publicly since 2002, but the message has taken some time to take hold because a lot of people think that hypnosis is only useful for past life regression, when in fact a far more important aspect is taking clients to their lives between lives, where they can find out where they came from, why they're here, where they're going, and a lot of information about their immortal character, which is very, very helpful for people to know. And so that's our purpose.
Right, and it certainly is a very interesting subject because I've heard a lot and read a lot on past lives, but that very interesting between lives area is something that is quite unique and not something I think that many people have touched on. How did you become involved? I mean, you were a counselor, a psychologist. How did you become interested in the subject of past lives? Was it always an interest of yours?
Well, no. As a matter of fact, going back 50 years, I began in the 1950s as a traditional therapist, working with hypnotherapy to uncover such things as childhood trauma, that sort of thing. And so for a long time in those early years, basically, I was working, you know, as a counselor in behavior modification and these kinds of more traditional, you know, family therapy kinds of things. What would happen to me in those very early years, Emily, is people would call me and say, well, since you're a hypnotherapist, then undoubtedly you can do past life regression. And I would tell them, and this is just starting in the 50s, my gosh, you know, where the Bridie Murphy case was really, I mean, I go back a long, long way. This was the first time after World War II people began to really take notice of past life regression. So they would call me and I would say, no, I'm afraid you're going to have to find one of those metaphysical people. I'm very traditional. I don't do this sort of thing. And this went on for some time until I had my comeuppance finally. With this imperious attitude by my first past life case. And what happened here, Emily, is that I had a man who wanted to come to see me because of the sharp pain in his side that he'd had since childhood. He didn't ask for past life regression, or I wouldn't have taken him. So he thought perhaps that there had been some trauma. Perhaps he'd fallen on a kitchen knife or something as a child, and whatever it was, he didn't know, and it was getting worse. So the doctors had told him that it was a psychosomatic illness because x-rays turned up nothing, and so he was really at the end of his rope, and it was very, very hard for him not being able to sleep properly during the nights and so forth. So I took this case. And we went through his childhood. I explored all the issues of his childhood. And it really yielded nothing. However, you know, Emily, in a case like this where I had my breakthrough, this individual was a very good hypnosis subject. He went very deep, very quickly, and in fact got ahead of me. And that's kind of important to know because he went from what I would call middle alpha state into the theta state almost by himself. He was very deep. So finally, out of frustration, I said, go to the source of your pain. So the next thing we know, this man is dying in the mud in France in World War I from a bayonet wound to his side. I can't believe what's happening. I am a historian, and I knew about this particular battle, the first battle of the Somme in 1916. And this man was apparently a British sergeant in the 4th Corps, British Corps. And he was really sort of in his last gasp when we tuned into this scene. So I found out about his name, his rank, what division he was in, the exact time and so forth. And yet I still didn't believe what was happening, but I had to admit that this was something that I had to deal with in the moment. So what I did is I deprogrammed him as I would have if he, for example, had fallen on a sharp object. I just deprogrammed him in a traditional way. And so we got past that, and then later I talked to him about his experience.
I have a question on that. When he sort of was back in the present, as it were, did he remember everything he had said, or is it?
Oh yes, there's two ways to handle this, Emily. There are some traumas that are so severe people do not, they don't want to recall in detail what they have told you, even though you might have it on a tape. They would prefer that you get out of that shell, so to speak, of that moment and discuss the ramifications of the trauma. In this case, though, he told me that he wanted to remember everything. So I told him in hypnosis before I brought it out that he would remember all the details of what he had told me in deep hypnosis. So he was stunned. He said, I just never believed it could be, my problem could be anything related to a former life. So we talked a lot about this, and later, I want to say, because I was such a skeptic, Emily, I checked with the British War Office and the Imperial War Museum in London, and I did some other research and found out that, in fact, he was the person that he said he was. And, of course, what was really rewarding to me was a while later, he called and said that he had no more pain in his side. Then it was over. And then I got a letter from him a year or two later saying that his life was still wonderful and that he was free of pain. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is what brought me to the party, as far as believing that, in fact, there was something, about this whole thing with regard to past lives. However, Emily, at the same time, I need to tell you that it took a couple of more years before I had my first spirit world case, someone who went between lives. And the thing is, I'd like to impress on your listeners that there are still a lot of hypnotherapists out there who work in past life regression but believe that the life between is an area of no consequence. It's just a grayish limbo that can produce nothing worthwhile, and this is a grievous error because, in fact, we do wonderful therapy with people who are able to recall their life between lives and who they really are as a soul that goes from body to body. That soul existence, that soul mind, that soul character, if you will, does not change as rapidly as our temperament.
Have you found that anyone is a candidate for this kind of regression, or are there some people that it's like there's a block, you just can't get through?
Yeah, there is that. Now, there are people who say that anyone can be hypnotized, and this is not true. There are people who do resist hypnosis, even though they may come to you and say they wish to have hypnosis. I think the conventional wisdom among all hypnotherapists is that you can have difficulty with about 10% of your clients